Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to this explainer. If you've ever felt that finance is just this cold, rigid wall of numbers, well, you are in the exact right place today. We're going to take a bit of a journey to shift how we actually view finance. We're moving it away from a sterile spreadsheet and turning it into a deeply human-centric symphony. Today, we're exploring a really fascinating framework from our source material titled The Symphony of Finance, Integration and Insight. Consider this thought right out of the gate. Not just as summary, as synthesis, the way scattered insights become a rhythm. This quote from Mira beautifully sets the thoughtful, atmospheric tone for our whole exploration. It's not just about adding up columns at the end of the month, right? It's about synthesizing those numbers into a rhythm that actually means something to the real people involved in your organization. Our source material actually begins in a reflective sanctuary. It's a quiet terrace where our guides for this journey, Arav and Mira, are sitting with an old brass ledger clasp. And what's super fascinating here is that the hinge is engraved with the word Samanvaya. That word represents binding these scattered financial truths together. The pieces are ready to be woven, giving a cyclical, almost sacred quality to the actual act of accounting. Let's move to and see how this builds across their timeline. This isn't their first walk together. They've already explored Walk 1, where time and value mean every rupee carries rhythm. Walk 2, capital budgeting, or how decisions breathe. Walk 3 covers dividends and deals, showing how organizations share and reshape. Walk 4 is all about portfolios and derivatives, to find balance. And finally, Walk 5 brings us to governance and grace, power held with care. Which brings us to Section 1, Integration Beyond the Numbers. All right, we're shifting from high-level philosophy straight into practical business application. Let's see what happens when we take these deeply human concepts and apply them to the daily grind of running an organization. Traditionally, corporate integration just means making sure your software systems are talking to each other. But listen to how Arav and Mira define it. They say integration is the ability to connect financial concepts across decisions. It is not just coherence, it is compassion. It's about aligning your budgeting directly with your strategy and your valuation with your governance to actively care for the organization and its people. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it totally subverts our standard business expectations. The source details a cooperative dairy that used integrated dashboards to link up procurement, pricing, inventory, and customer feedback. And the result? Decisions actually became dialogues. It wasn't just efficiency, it was empathy. They literally transformed raw supply chain mechanics into an active listening. Let's walk through a couple more real-world examples. Think about a publishing house mapping its editorial calendars directly to cash flow and reader engagement cycles. The result of that wasn't just planning, it was presence. Meanwhile, a school trust decided to align its scholarship disbursement with seasonal income patterns and student needs. The outcome there was deep human attunement. So it's not just accounting, it's truly tuning into the community's natural rhythms. Moving right along to Section 2, Insight as Deep Awareness. So once we've integrated our financial systems with empathy and attunement, how do we actually look at the data those systems produce? Well, true financial insight requires looking straight through the data to find the nuanced human behavior underneath. It's the ability to see patterns, anticipate shifts, and ask way better questions. It is not just knowing, it is noticing. It's that absolutely vital shift from simply staring at a spreadsheet to becoming deeply aware of the human realities that are actually driving those numbers. Take this wonderful story of a local bakery. They noticed a really sharp dip in sales on monsoon mornings. Now, what's the standard business reaction? You'd probably slap a quick discount on the pastries just to move the inventory, right? But instead, they noticed their customers were cold and wet. So they offered warm millet porridge and storytelling sessions. They reacted to the data with humanity. It wasn't just data anymore, it was dignity. And this brilliantly illustrates how raw observations become profound actions. For example, a cooperative noticed that milk returns were actually higher when farmers attended monthly circles. So what did they do? They invested in transport and childcare to help them attend. That wasn't just correlation, it was care. Or take a school that realized students retained way more when lessons began with questions rather than answers, so they totally redesigned their modules around curiosity. That wasn't just pedagogy, it was poetry. Which takes us to Section 3, the power of storytelling. Okay, so we've integrated our systems with compassion, and we've gathered insights through deep noticing. But how do we actually communicate this to our teams, our boards, or our communities? That's exactly where storytelling becomes an essential leadership tool. It translates numbers into narratives, connects stakeholders deeply, builds organizational trust, and ultimately guides much better decision-making. Storytelling in corporate finance sometimes gets a bad rap, but it absolutely does not simplify or dumb down the finance. It deepens our understanding of it. It bridges the gap between the people living in the spreadsheets and the people living out there in the operations. This is seriously one of my absolute favorite examples from the source text. A publishing house actually used bodily metaphors to explain budgets to their team. They called fixed costs the bones, variable costs the breath, and cash flow the pulse. Now, you might think that sounds a little silly, but it wasn't childish at all. It created absolute clarity. Imaginative language allows non-financial staff to instantly and intuitively grasp some pretty complex fiscal realities. Let's look at how others pulled this off. The cooperative used visual storyboards that linked their quarterly metrics directly to a farmer's journey. This brought the reality of a delivery challenge or a festival sale right into the boardroom. The result was pure resonance. And the school, they had student-led presentations on fee structures and resource allocation. The human result there wasn't just transparency, it was profound trust. Narrative-driven reporting basically transforms an audience of critics into an audience of partners. And finally, Section 4, a reflective conclusion. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, but as our guides Arav and Mira remind us, true integration requires us to take a breath. Let's kind of return to that quiet terrace where our journey began, letting the noise and speed of the business day just fade away for a moment. Integration requires pause. Insight requires humility. To actually apply these concepts in your own organization, you really have to look inward first. You have to slow down enough to synthesize what you're seeing right in front of you. So ask yourself, what have I learned about value? Take a second to really think about that. Beyond the numbers in your bank account, beyond the valuation of your company, what is the actual rhythm of value in your daily work? So the crucial point is this: how do I integrate financial insight into my decisions? When you're sitting at your desk tomorrow morning, staring down a dense spreadsheet or a really complex dashboard, how are you going to find the human attunement hidden within that data? It all leads to this core question of identity. What kind of manager do I want to be? Do you want to be someone who just drives relentless efficiency, or someone who cultivates empathy? Someone who just reports the news, or someone who builds trust through authentic storytelling? And finally, how do I honor both numbers and narratives? Because let's be clear here, we absolutely need both, the ledger and the life it represents. It's about holding the hard data in one hand and the human story in the other, and giving them both equal weight in your decision-making. We leave our guides on the terrace as the almonds are nearly gone, leaving us with these profound final thoughts. Mira whispers, integration is not just connection, it's care. And Arav replies, and insight is not just clarity, it's courage. So as you close this explainer and head back to your own ledgers and your own teams, ask yourself, do you have the courage to care? Thanks so much for learning with me today.